right, it looks like there's just a few people kind of trickling in here. So I'm going to go ahead and get us started. So hi, everyone. Thank you again for joining today. I know it's, like I mentioned earlier, if you were on the line, a really just wild time in general, but also right now it always is in the education world and any world, right? Just kind of wrapping up the to-do list for the year, getting ready to hopefully take a break and have some time to relax and not have to work on too much stuff over break, but there's always a little bit, right? But today I'm really excited to share with you all. We have some incredible presenters from the state of Illinois and East St. Louis and in Peoria who are really going to share with you how they're implementing career development experiences in health sciences. I'm going to take a little bit of time at the beginning just to, introduce you all about what a career development experience is. I know some folks on the line are really familiar with it, others aren't. So with all of these IWIN sessions, just really spending some time to do a little bit of framing and context to make sure that we're all in the same space. But we'd love to hear who's with us today. So again, in the chat, if you could just write your name, title, organization, and would love to hear, as you're coming into this space and thinking about work-based learning in the health sciences sector, if there's any questions or wonderings that you have that you would love for us to address during this time, and maybe it'll be addressed during the presentation, but we'll also have time for Q&A after each presentation. But would love to hear how you all are kind of coming into this space and thinking about health sciences and work-based learning, and also who's here generally. Also just some general kind of like housekeeping logistics. If you can please mute your computers and your phones during the presentations. I know I'm always dialed in by phone. My computer won't quite support audio, video, and sharing of a screen. So I've just fully committed to phone. And I'm always trying to grapple with double unmuting sometimes. But again, we will have time for Q&A after each presentation. We do use the chat heavily. If you were on our IWIN kickoff about a month-ish or so ago, the end of October, the chat was used quite a bit. I know I heard from a lot of people after the IWIN session that they made connections and had a lot of learnings through the chat beyond even what was shared during the presentation. So please feel free to chat away. We'll be kind of monitoring that chat and seeing if there's, questions that we can address directly in the chat. Or call those out kind of at the end after each presentation. But thank you all again here for joining today. So the plan for this session here, we have about an hour and a half together. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm going to provide a little bit of background about what a career development experience is. We have two presentations from Jennifer Irvin with BJC Healthcare in East St. Louis, and then also with Michael from Peoria, who's a principal at the Woodruff Career Technical Center. And then also hoping to have some time, I know last time we did IWIN, there was a lot of content, a lot of material to get through, but really hoping here today that after our two presentations, just kind of assign us all and break us out into different breakout groups and just do some reflecting and discussing in small groups rather than as a large group. So it looks like we have about 45 people on right now. So I want to make sure we have that time to connect and reflect with others. And then just a few closing and next steps, get your feedback on some thoughts for upcoming sessions for IWIN. And just to highlight here again, this is only our second convening of IWIN, the Illinois Work-Based Learning Innovation Network, what the goals are of why we're getting together and what we're hoping to accomplish through these. And so to really each time highlight and explore the innovative models that are happening. So this time is really focused on that health science space. They're going to talk to you a bit about how they have adjusted for virtual work-based learning in these spaces, but we do have kind of a focus this year on that just because it's such a high need this year, and will continue to be as we're thinking about how to keep implementing virtual work-based learning to really support sustainable, high-quality models that ultimately, again, provide that broader and more equitable access, especially as we think about building social capital and creating more access to opportunities for Black and Latinx students throughout the state. And another really awesome piece of this in general, I think a lot of times when people ask me or team, I'm sure you all know this, like, how do things get done? Like, how does this happen? How, as you hear about these presentations today, how did they make this all happen? And a lot of that is because of connections and relationships. And that's a big piece of work-based learning too, the value that it has for students to really connect them to relationships and people who can share information within this space, really sharing our best practices, our learnings, our resources, There's such a breadth of information out there, and really excited, again, to continue to convene this group to share those. And then, there were some pieces highlighted at our first IWIN, and will continue to be, but wherever there's needs that we can identify for state policy changes or support systems to better support work-based learning, we definitely want to hear about those and discuss those and kind of think about those within this work of IWIN as we continue to move forward. So I'm just going to take a few moments here. Again, I'm Heather Penczak. I'm a policy and program manager with Education Systems Center. I shared this earlier at our first IWIN, but just background on me very briefly is I was a former high school science teacher, taught freshman biology for many years. I taught in an alternative and option school setting here in Chicago. And then most recently, I was managing a high school internship program with an organization called Urban Alliance. So coming into this space, whenever I think about work-based learning, I'm very much thinking about what it means to be a teacher, what it means to work with employers, work with students, manage this. And there's just so many different moving pieces. And so I try to think about all those lenses and all those perspectives each time I come into this space and I'm working with others around work-based learning. But specifically here, in terms of state frameworks, want to talk to you all about a career development experience. And so if you're familiar with the work-based learning continuum, that's defined again through the Illinois Career Pathways Dictionary. A career development experience is that fourth box along the continuum. So, the general expectation is that by the time a student gets to this type of experience, they've had some opportunities to do some career awareness, watching videos, taking some surveys, kind of reflecting as an individual. They've done some career exploration. They might have had a job shadow, guest speakers. There might have been a career expo in their space. They've also had an opportunity to engage in a team-based challenge, which is a project-based learning activity where they're working closely with a mentor from the industry area that their problem is based in. And so by the time a student gets to a career development experience, they've really started to engage deeply within that industry area. And so, again, here for health sciences, by the time they're here in that career development experience, they're feeling pretty confident that health sciences is a career area that they want to pursue for their college and career pathway. They might also complete their career development experience in health science and be like, okay, nope. And that's also a good thing, right? It's a win if a student realizes and it confirms for them that they want to continue to pursue that pathway. It's also a win if it problematizes that pathway for them and makes them think maybe a little bit differently about why they liked health sciences to begin with and what other careers they might be able to engage those skills in. Like helping others, for example, can be done in many different careers, not just in health sciences. And so from the Illinois Career Pathways Dictionary, here's the definition of a career development experience. Again, this is where a student is getting to a pretty intense space of engaging in that industry area. So it's a supervised work experience. It relates to their career area of interest. Again, by this point, they've engaged in a lot of other work-based learning to really inform that. It's occurring in a workplace or under authentic working conditions. I've mentioned this a few times with many of you, but I think authentic working conditions has definitely been problematized in the space that we're in, where we have a lot of our learners and ourselves are remote. And so thinking through too, like how we can make a remote space really authentic very much counts as a career development experience. I've had some questions about that, whether remote CDEs count, and absolutely, as long as they're engaging authentically in those tasks. It should be co-developed by an education provider and at least one employer to make sure it's meeting the needs on both ends. There should be some form of compensation or educational credit. Again, at this point, by the time you're getting to the CDE, the student really is performing work for that employer or for that partner that's hosting this experience. And so there should be that compensation or credit to the participant. There should be a reinforcement of those foundational professional skills, especially thinking about our essential employability skills. If a student were to engage in a CDE and realize that this isn't the path they want to take in terms of that career industry area, they still would have developed those essential employability skills through that experience. I encountered this frequently when I worked with students at Urban Alliance for the internship program, where they would get placed at an employer who didn't quite match their industry area, but they were going to be engaging in tasks related to their industry area. Like, for example, they might get placed at a medical institution, but they're actually going to engage in some finance business, right? But either way, would always be talking to them about how they can really develop those essential skills through that experience. There should be some form too of a professional skills assessment, and really just taking this as a time for that participant, that student, and that employer partner or external partner who's hosting this to really engage in feedback and conversation with that student. You know, they hear from their educators, their teachers, their social networks. They hear a lot of different feedback, but really engaging with that person on a one-on-one level that they're completing a CDE at is incredibly valuable as a feedback tool and something for participants, students to really start to learn. How do you take some constructive like criticism, areas of growth, areas of strength, and really focus on those as an individual. And then the guidance here is that they're taking place for a minimum of 60 total hours. You're going to see some examples that go well beyond those total hours. There's also some examples where communities will do kind of like 2 micro internships, so 2 30-hour internships. It's all kind of based on each space and what makes sense logistically in terms of that hour requirement. I like to put this slide up here. Career development experience and the definition. I think sometimes people look at it and they're like, oh gosh, now I got to implement a career development experience. It's really it's an umbrella term for a lot of things that we commonly know them as otherwise. So internships, school-based enterprises, supervised agricultural experiences, cooperative education, even like a youth apprenticeship, which would go well beyond generally that 60 hours. But all of these pieces count as a CDE. So if this is something that you're implementing in your space, it counts as a CDE.
Is that really
and so just want to share here a couple of pieces in terms of resources. So one of my first projects when I started with the Ed Systems team almost a couple years ago now was working closely with the Illinois State Board of Education and the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity to develop this career development experience toolkit that really takes you through all the different pieces of creating and implementing a career development experiences. It highlights a lot of best practice examples of how organizations are accomplishing this. There's even more that really there needs to be a republishing of this in the new year with all this being shared here through iWin, but there is a website for it as well. So I'll move us there really quickly. So you can download the entire document for this toolkit. You can also go to the website and just look at it per section, understanding that different communities are in different spaces of where they are at in implementation. But one of the big pieces that I think is really helpful within this resource is that there's a lot of customizable templates. So if you need to create like an outreach form that you would send to an external partner to fill out for them to describe their CDE, if you needed to create kind of like an assessment for participants, all those different pieces are in there. And so you can customize them. They're uploaded as Word documents for you to download and edit as needed to fit your space. So definitely encourage you all to take a look at this resource. If you have any questions about it, I'm happy to, get on a call with you and talk through these or answer any questions via email. But the hope really here is that it gets utilized and adapted and just arranged in a way that makes sense for your community that's still kind of fitting the general frameworks of that definition for a career development experience. And so kind of my last things here before I move us into our presentation are just again thinking through the resource of these essential employability and technical competencies that have been defined for the state as part of the Post-Secondary and Workforce Readiness Act and for those college and career pathway endorsements. And so we have the essential employability competencies, but we also have competencies defined specifically thinking about today for the health sciences and technology area. So there's a snapshot of them here. There's 10 total competencies for this, and we're actually going to hear from Peoria today later about how they've really taken these competencies and embedded them within their career development experiences and in general for their health sciences experiences within their programs. But as we're transitioning over to Jennifer, who's going to be presenting to us from BJC Healthcare, would just love to again hear from you all about how you've been engaging students this year, exploring careers and related tasks in health sciences. Again, like I mentioned earlier, we're going to have really wonderful presenters, but we also know that there's a lot of valuable information among attendees here. So would love to hear what you're up to in health sciences. But otherwise, I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer, unless there's any questions popping up for me here before.
Yeah, there's a couple questions that I'll just put out there, and this can be addressed by you or our presenters from Peoria and elsewhere. Neil from Evanston raised the question of financial resources that employers might be able to access to entice them to participate. So if folks have solid practices on that, please feel free to share that in the chat or verbally as we move through. The other question that came up in the intro portion was just thinking through how folks have successfully navigated HIPAA concerns in the context of health science CDEs. So I'm sure that's something that will be addressed because I know that's a common question.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Emily. And definitely HIPAA. I know both of our presenters here have really developed some strong partnerships to talk through that. I think generally we get the question, like, how do you get around HIPAA? And you don't get around HIPAA. You just have to work with your partners and figure out a process for making sure that students meet the approval and the documentation to engage in the health sciences space and meet all things HIPAA. But I leave it to our expert presenters here to answer that question more deeply. But thank you for raising those. All right, otherwise, Jennifer, I turn it to you.
All righty, thank you, and thank you for having me again. I'm so happy to be here. Before I kick into my presentation, because I don't want to forget, I'll just tell you, and I'll kind of lead in, because I've been with BJC Healthcare for 25 years. And so prior to shifting into my current role as school community education partner, I spent 8 years at our system school, which was the College of Nursing and Allied Health. And my role at that time was recruitment and admissions into our nursing and allied health programs. And what drove me to make the shift and really create the space that I am in now has a lot to do with what we're talking about now, the importance of students having experiences. Because what I found is that I would get some wonderful applicants, and they would be great. But if you just would have taken math, or if you just had chemistry, what you haven't shadowed, and you want to go into nursing, and there is blood and guts. And so shifting to make a space to create an avenue for students to be able to explore our hospitals is what drove me to really create this role that I've been fully in this role for over 15 years and absolutely love what I do. So with regards to HIPAA, when we get towards the end, I'll address that question again, because really it's, as Heather said, you just got to work with it. So I'm going to go ahead and start my presentation. Heather, next slide. I want to start out by showing you a snapshot of what our organization looks like. We are pretty big. So BJC Healthcare is made up of 15 hospitals and several health facilities. We have schools that we partner very, very closely with. The Goldfarb College of Nursing and Allied Health and Washington University School of Medicine are both on our medical center complex. This slide shows you, it talks about our employees. It says we have 30, and we actually have over 32,000 employees now, so the slide's a little dated. But what I want to really focus on is when we talk about career exploration, when you see the fact that within our organization, we have over 2,000 unique job titles. And so what I can always safely say to students and counselors is pretty likely whatever job or whatever career you're thinking about, there is someone within our organization doing that job. And our goal through my department is to be able to have students to be exposed, because that's how you're going to know what career you want to go into, is if you have a chance to experience it, whether it's shadowing or some of the other opportunities that we'll talk about. So go ahead to the next slide. So the department is BJC School Outreach and Youth Development, and we are dedicated to partnering with schools K through 12. My role, again, is anything to do with career development. So if it's about careers, if it's going to happen in any of our hospitals, it comes across my desk, it comes through my department, and that's how we facilitate it. When we talk about building an infrastructure like this, an integral part of it was policy. So after being in my role for about 3 years and working with the hospitals just sporadically, I took a lot of time to do research and partner with others hospital systems that were doing similar work to develop and write a policy that is universal to all of our hospitals that says if a student's going to come to any of our hospitals to participate in career exploration, this is what needs to happen. Further on into my career, HIPAA, about around in '96, HIPAA became a big deal. So when HIPAA became a big deal, then we had to study HIPAA and integrate HIPAA into our onboarding. So we as a department make sure that we offer a session of HIPAA session to our students in our schools that we partner with. So that's how we address HIPAA. We get them ready to come into our territory. Our website's on this slide. If you get an opportunity, please visit our website and you'll learn more about what we do. Next slide. Next slide, Heather, please. And this slide here is just kind of another segue into what we do, the one that talked about always essential, but again, just kind of breaking down and looking at the numbers and the complexities of what we need in order to be successful in healthcare. So we talk about all of the roles that are vital to our organization, but a number of them do require students to be interested in some kind of career in healthcare. So this just kind of gives a snapshot of their needs. And I can tell you on any given day in our organization, we have well over 250 entry-level positions that students can step right out of high school, apply, and if the interviewing go well, they can actually step into those roles. Next slide, please. We have created an infrastructure also to make sure that as we're working with students, I just think that it's important that we have that consistency. So once I start working with your students, I want to make sure that we have already identified a pathway for them to eventually, if they're interested, to become employees in our organization. So this here is just a very quick schematic of work that we have invested over 200 hours in meetings to develop a process so that when I'm working with a student and we determine that student determines what pathway they want. Again, in our organization, we have so many jobs, they can find that pathway, just kind of how we're going to guide them through that pathway and ultimately lead them, carry their hand to HR to where they can actually have an interview and hopefully become a part of our organization. So very busy slide, but a lot of work that went into building our infrastructure. Next slide. Today, I'm going to focus on how we partner with School District 189. I don't like to say I have favorites, but that's one of my favorites. And I say that for two reasons. Number one, when I talk about my tenure with BJC School Outreach, I can tell you I have been partnering with School District 189 for a very long time. And when we talk about partnerships, it is essential to have the school district and the business that are willing to come to the table and have those conversations. Sometimes not comfortable conversations, but conversations about this is what we need and this is what we would like for you to do and this is how we can partner. So we've had those conversations, and today I'm going to take you to a pictorial view of how we partner. I've listed some of the ways and all of the different career exploration activities that we go through. So from a pictorial standpoint, if you will allow, I'm just going to take you through a bunch of pictures and talk about kind of what we do. We start very young. Next picture. Our first engagement is a program that we call Adventures in Healthcare Camp. So that camp is designed for 7th and 8th graders because we feel like you need to start young. That's an opportunity for 7th and 8th graders to spend a week at any of our hospitals, a week during the summer. And every day during that week, they get to explore a different career. They're typically on campus from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. They come to work with their parents. And again, every day they get to explore a different career. So this slide is a little busy, but you can kind of get an idea of what happens during our Adventures in Healthcare camp. We typically will run 7 camps, one at 7 different hospitals. And on the Friday of the camp, all of the campers will end up at Washington University School of Medicine. And we do a day dedicated to STEM, where they get to see how research is developed and get to see things that they would not typically see in their community hospital. One of our hospitals, the Belleville Memorial Hospitals, we do get a lot of students, if their parents work for our hospital, we have parents that have students in District 189 that started out their engagement with us participating in Adventures in Healthcare Camp. Next slide. This is a busy slide too, but I just wanted to give you an overview of one of the internships that we have. And this internship is called the Helen Nash Internship. And this internship is designed for females of color. We select 2 females of color during the summer. They can spend 4 to 6 weeks with us. Every day they come to work, they get paid, they work for about 32 hours, and their work to us is all about career exploration. So they are working to learn where they want to end up at the end of this internship. And so if you look at the department rotations, we rotate them through all of our departments that they typically wouldn't see. So planning, pharmacy, advocacy, etc. But their week starts out with meeting the hospital president. This particular internship is housed at St. Louis Children's Hospital. So the first day they get to spend their about 4 hours of their internship with the president of the hospital, learning why the hospital needs a president and what his or her role is. Next slide. So I want to share with you a student from East St. Louis Senior High that did a phenomenal job on her internship, Diana Edmonds. We just absolutely loved her. She spent her summer with us as our Helen Nash internship. And it was just one of those situations that worked out so well that not only did she touch the hearts of all of us, but everyone that met her knew that she had been very well prepared in her classroom. I mean, she came and she knew how to respond. She was very professional and did an excellent job. This snapshot that I have up here is a picture of an article that we ran in our internal newspaper, BJC Today, just highlighting her experience. The next slide, please. There was an article featured with her and her phenomenal instructor, who is also on this video, on this Zoom call somewhere. I see her. Stephanie Tate is on this Zoom call that really groomed to make sure that she was ready for the opportunity. And they were able to be featured in a magazine called IME St. Louis that talked a lot about Diana's experience with us there at BJC Healthcare. Next slide. It gets better. She was also featured. She was able to present at an annual conference where she talked about her internship experience. And I'm telling you all of this and sharing all of this press that came with it because this is important. Not only does it shift and be able to share the experience so that we hope we're able to recruit other students, but from a peer-to-peer standpoint, it lets students know the possibility of forming those relationships, those professional relationships. And Ms. Evans did a very good job of talking about the importance of communications, the importance of paying attention in your classroom, the importance of preparing yourself to be able to take on such awesome opportunities. And so she was able to share her experience. And now I know that students tend to keep in touch. So I know that Diana is now has a blog that she's blogging and telling students how to prepare for a career in nursing, as that is her ultimate goal, to become a nurse. The very next slide is one that's near and dear to us, because now we also go into the classroom with, when we go into Miss Stephanie Tate Patterson's classroom at the Career and Technical Education Center there, we are working with her CNA students. And so we have typically 3 to 4 sessions during the school year where we're going in, we're talking about professional development, we have professional speakers to come in, whatever she asks us to send or do, we try to fulfill her request. This particular slide that you see here is the culmination of our school year, where we were able to do in-person interviews at the school, where we brought in our human resources and our clinical nurse managers to actually interview the CNA students for roles within our organization. So there you see some interviews taking place. Next slide. Here is a snapshot of the folks that came for the interviews. We have our HR manager, we have two of our clinical nurse managers, and we have human resource and talent acquisition personnel that are actually interviewing the students as if they are going to be preparing to take on jobs. So that was our mock interview day. And that day was followed up with, next slide. Some of the students had an opportunity to go and actually have real interviews. But the beauty of those mock interviews is that connections were made to where those TA and HR professionals were quickly able to identify students that would be good fits within our organization. And so Diana interviewed. It took a little while, but she's now actually working for one of our hospitals, Belleville Memorial Hospital. So we're very glad to have her. A huge benefit to her is that because she wants to pursue a career in nursing, of course, at BJC, we offer tuition reimbursement. So we can help her from a financial standpoint to get to that next step by helping her with her tuition. Next slide. So that's our partnership. And so just to kind of share some of the feedback, I won't read this quote to you because I have a very special treat for you. This is a quote from our HR manager, but my next quote is from a person that, next quote, please. Next slide, is from Miss Patterson herself. So I know she's on here, and if you can decide whether or not you want to turn on your camera, but if you can just share a little bit, Stephanie, about when we came to your school to do those interviews, what that meant to your students and how that worked out for you.
Hello, everybody, and thank you so much, Mrs. Irvin, for allowing me to speak today regarding all the wonderful things you presented to our students at East St. Louis Senior High School. It was definitely a real real world setting for the students right there at Eastside, where they were able to, they actually interviewed with 3 to 4 of the managers that were there. So it was reality for them. So while they were tired and they were like, okay, what's next and everything, they actually were able to get that experience so they would know what would happen if they go further. So Diana, yes, is working at Barnes Jewish at Memorial. She's doing pretty well there. She works the night shift as a patient care tech. She is in school for completing her prereqs in nursing. I'm not sure if she's using the tuition reimbursement because it does come with an attachment to the hospital, but she is progressing within the program in order to get to nursing school. Other things, it was nice for the other students to see what was going on and for that relationship to continue. So our future nurses within the nursing assistant program can also have this opportunity as well.
Okay, thank you. Very good. Thank you. We'll go ahead into our next slide. Thanks for sharing. So again, pictorial, just kind of showing you how in working with Ms. Patterson, it really makes a huge difference because you have to have that partnership because opportunities in the world of healthcare, they come up overnight. So sometimes I can give a week's notice to say, we're having this program and we need students, or sometimes it's literally overnight. So this was an opportunity that we were able to plan where the students were able to come and visit the medical center and learn more about careers in healthcare and have an interactive session. So I just put this snapshot in here to let you see. They're at the Gold Farb College of Nursing, listening, participating and learning about what it takes to get into our nursing program. Next slide. Here is an opportunity that was a very short notice for students to participate in one of the Washington University School of Medicine's programs called a medical school crash course. And I can tell you, this is put together by medical students and they're putting this together while they're going to medical school. So it's a rush. And I am so happy to say I sent that email to East St. Louis Senior High and said, look, here is an opportunity and we need students. And I'm telling you, they stepped up to the plate and the students came. And at the back end where we did the evaluations from the student coordinators at the medical school, they loved the participation from the students and how ready they were to engage and learn more about careers in becoming medical professionals. Next slide. Other opportunities include, Heather, next slide. Are we froze?
Sorry, I think I might be frozen on here. Let's see. Is it popping up for you here now, maybe?
No, but I have it on. I don't have it. I couldn't put it on. Unfortunately, I couldn't put Google on my work slide, but I can continue to talk and allow you to catch up. So she's showing the Washington University School of Medicine. Now I'm looking over at my other computer. Our next slide, you might need to. Okay, so the next slide that you would see, and then you're going to get a copy of all the slides too. So another opportunity that we have is called the Explorers Post. And a lot of you may have heard of Explorers Post because it's actually a partnership with industry and the Explorers. And with our hospitals, we have a post that's hosted at Belleville Memorial Hospital in Illinois, but we also have a post at our Barnes Jewish Hospital, as well as a post at Christian Hospital. With COVID, we made a shift. And so that shift was, rather than have 3-4 different posts, we decided to come together and we still have our post in Illinois at Belleville Memorial, but our St. Louis, Missouri posts, we decided to combine them and expand capacity, offer it via Zoom and expand capacity to where instead of having 7 students in each of the posts, we've now expanded and we're able to offer that opportunity to over 110 students. So we had our kickoff meeting, and at our kickoff meetings, we had 15 students from East St. Louis Senior High that participated. And of those 15 students that participated, we have roughly 9 that have signed on and will be participating in our post that the first program will begin on December 9th and will go throughout the month of May, where each night, each Tuesday night, each first Tuesday of each month, they will actually get to explore careers in a different healthcare. Our first post will be kicked off by our chief of surgery from Washington University. And throughout the post, we have nurses scheduled. We have, I want to always try to get in careers that they don't hear about. So we have a disseminator scheduled. So we have very interactive presenters scheduled throughout the post. This here's a picture of students that actually participated in the Belleville Memorial Post. And this was pre-COVID. So you see they're actually in the hospital and able to participate. During this particular session, we're going to be virtual, but it's still going to be very interactive to where students will have an opportunity to work along with us. The slide that just popped up is an opportunity. As I mentioned, sometimes I can give a real long notice, and other days I'll send an email and say, Ms. Patterson, I got an opportunity. We need 8 students from Moulage tomorrow. And I'm telling you, School District 189 delivers. So Moulage for us is where we need actors to come and play the role as patients. And the benefit is when students get to play the role of patients, they get an opportunity to see the real world of healthcare. So the students from District 189, they are our standbys. We can definitely count on them to come and show up for Moulage. And so this slide just shows kind of how we have professional, I guess, makeup artists, whatever their scenario is, they will make the student up to look like they're in that role. So whether it's they're portraying someone that's been stabbed, someone that has a head wound, the students are dressed up like that, and they get an opportunity to interact with professionals that help to prepare those professionals for critical care situations. Next slide. Do we have our next slide? So the next slide, now I'm going to shift. So I went through a lot of the short-term programs. Now this next set of programs, this program that I'm talking about is more of a long-term experience. It's called our Best Pharmacy and Medical Program. Now this is over the summer. It takes the entire summer. So students that commit to this are committing to go from roughly July cleanup to when school is ready to start to participate. The first slide kind of gives a snapshot of the program, the makeup, talks about our history, the fact that 100% of our students that have participated in this program since its inception in 2008 have continued their education, whether it be a college, whether it be a technical school, they have continued their education, and 87% of them have pursued careers in healthcare. The next slide. Next slide. So, and this program was built because of the growing need for healthcare professionals, but not just healthcare professionals, but when you look at the landscape of the existing landscape, we were really trying to increase and make it more multicultural and get healthcare providers that reflected our patient population. So Dr. Player, here's Dr. Player, one of our pharmacists at Barnes Jewish Hospital, is really the brainchild behind this program. Next slide. And so I'm going to keep going. And so during the course of this program, students are taken through ACT preparation. They can get college credits. They also is very heavy in career exploration. In fact, the brunt of it is career exploration. The class is housed at the College of Pharmacy, where the students, it's a 3-year program. So they enroll, they get accepted as the summer of their freshman year. If they do well academically and socially, they're invited back to come back in their sophomore year, as well as their junior summer. Their junior summer, they have the opportunity to live in the dorms at the College of Pharmacy and experience college life as well. Next slide. Again, it was founded in 2008, started with 2 cohorts. Now we're up to 3 cohorts, and we're really growing the program each year. This year, we had to do a huge adaptation. Next slide. We had to do best, and we had to present the program totally 100% virtually, which was a challenge, but we stepped up to the challenge and it worked out really well. So most of our interactions were via Zoom. We condensed the program and we adapted our curriculum due to what was going on, and we weren't able to interact with the students. So next slide, it'll show kind of what we implemented in the program. We, of course, still did the ACT prep, focusing really on critical thinking, We introduced the students to those healthcare pathways. We actually had the presenters to prepare Zoom presentations. But one of the things, the caveats was, okay, we want you to present to our students that are participating in BEST, but we want them to see your work. So we had nurses, pharmacists, therapists in their departments walking through, providing patient care so the students that were in the actual BEST program via Zoom could see the world of healthcare. So they could actually see it. So again, when we talk about HIPAA, yes, we had to do HIPAA for the students in order for them to participate in that as well. Another big part of it was professional development, having presentations and every day a session on professional development and college. It says college readiness, but it's actually college and career readiness that we emphasize. Next slide. Here's a sample of the schedule that we followed for our freshman students, the year one students that joined us. This was an example of their schedule. You see, it was very rigorous, and every day our expectation was that they would log on and be ready, cameras on, and would follow the format of the day. So that's the schedule, a sample of the schedule for the freshmen. Next slide. This is a sample of the schedule for the students. When I talk about those students that are staying on campus, they're getting immersed in a pharmacy tech course. And if they're interested in pharmacy and they do real well in our BEST pharmacy program, one of the perks is if they make the grades and they do well in all BEST 1, 2, and 3, we've now developed a BEST 4. Those students, if accepted into the College of Pharmacy, they go for free. And so that's a huge perk. And we have had some students that have been able to attain that, where they've been able to attend the College of Pharmacy for free as a result of participating in our BEST pharmacy program. Next slide. Again, focusing on nursing and those careers in healthcare where we always like to, make it a picture where students can attain. So these are all what you call stress 2+2 careers. I mean, you can go to school for 2 years, get your associates, 2 more, get your bachelor's, et cetera, in nursing or any of these careers that we're showing the students. With pharmacy, you start out as a pharmacy tech and you build your way up on the career ladder. Next slide. I wanted to just highlight when we talk about School District 189, but I also wanted to share with some of the other districts within Illinois, and hopefully some of you are on here, that we recruit wide. And so I just did a 3-year snapshot of our BEST programs and participation that we've had from schools. And you can see since 2018, if we're looking at East St. Louis Senior High School students in 2020, our virtual program, we had 2 students. And in 2019, we had 3, so we lost 1. I'm telling you, this virtual world is really challenging. It takes a lot. And so we had 1 student, we didn't lose that student. That student actually was in the BEST 3 last year, so would not have been able to participate this year. But look at some of the other schools. We work with all schools. So we had students from some of the other Illinois schools to participate in our BEST program over the years as well. Next slide. And I want to just, as I get close to the end of my presentation, just share with you opportunities that we have developed as we have adapted to this virtual world. These virtual career presentations are active career presentations that we're offering right now to schools in Illinois and Missouri, where we go in and we partner with schools to work with their students to make sure that career exposure is there. Before I conclude, I just want to see if I missed anything. Stephanie, anything stand out in your mind that I may have missed for your students? I know we had a ton of pictures that I weren't able to share, but it's a partnership that works, and it's a partnership that takes planning, that willingness to seize the opportunity. So Stephanie, go ahead if you wanted to share anything before we wrap up.
I think you covered a lot. I will say it's a partnership. It is challenging in order to get the students to actually see it through sometimes. So for me, I take out time specifically geared towards getting those applications in, helping with writing and everything. And I think it does go a long way, even when it's time to write their essays for college and things of that nature. That experience does carry on. And it's exciting to see the students progress through these programs and have the exposure necessary to solidify a career in healthcare. So I am really, really excited. I don't think you did mention, we just didn't have pictures up, but you're bringing medical students or he was in the program there at the hospital, the young man that spoke to the students.
It's listed on there, but I didn't talk about it.
It's listed on there. Okay, so we didn't have a picture of him. So that actually coming to the school, you interacting with the students and them seeing people that look like them that are also successful is huge for East St. Louis students.
Mm-hmm. And then final notes, students do keep in contact. So I just did a little bit of a list, just a little bit, and I'll just share with you. Of those students over the years, again, being at this work a while, I have this is strictly from East St. Louis Senior High, students that I still maintain contact. Well, they reach out to me. So 3 physicians, 1 psychologist, an engineer, 2 biologists, and couple respiratory therapists, and a number of nurses. And these students, they keep in contact. When I mean, I've gone to their weddings, I get invitations to baby showers, but it's because once you begin to, as Ms. Patterson, invest in the students and the results will come. I mean, and I can say School District 189 is a district that invests in their students, and having Ms. Patterson as a partner has been phenomenal to the work that we're able to do through BJC School Outreach. Thank you. I'm done. Questions? I don't know how you're going to do questions, but I can answer them at the end or however you want to do them. So where's
Thus far, there are no questions in the chat box, but if folks want to unmute themselves to ask questions, I'll defer to Heather on timing.
Yeah, absolutely. We can spend a couple of minutes if you want to write them in the chat, or if you have any that you want to say out loud while we have Jennifer and Stephanie here to share with you all. But again, every time I hear about the program here at BJC Healthcare, I think I'm always learning something new and more impressed by all that you all do. You know, mentioned the work-based learning continuum early in this presentation, and this is very much addressed within the scope of opportunities that students have, right? And so the early exposure that they're able to get and continue to interact builds them up to be even more successful in those more intensive internship type experiences. And I just think your example speaks so much to the value and the importance of partnerships and relationships to get to a place where you can have students Zooming and doing patient care and being on the floor and interacting directly with patients and in spaces that I think a lot of us, you know, get worried about putting students in and going through that process, but your partnership and relationship makes it happen.
Thank you. All right.
Well, thank you both again. I can move us. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jennifer. Sorry.
No, thank you all for your attention. And again, remember our website is embedded in the slides. And if you have questions later, my email is in the presentation somewhere. Feel free to send an email, but we love partnering with schools. That's what we do 100% of the time. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, if you have questions, you think about them as we're going along, you can put them in the chat. We might have some time here later as well, but otherwise, I think I'll move us forward then to Michael, if you're all set.
Yes, thanks, Heather. I'm unmuting myself here. Can everybody hear me all right?
Yes, good on my end.
Great. So my name's Michael Kuhn. I am the principal of Woodruff Career Technical Center in Peoria, and I also oversee the career tech programs in Peoria Public Schools. So to give you a quick snapshot of Woodruff, we are basically an old high school building, and we have programs that range anywhere from barbering to cosmetology to healthcare. When I became principal, Heather, next slide, please. There was kind of a shift in our district, and our superintendent basically gave us a mission to kind of look at careers in a different way. And there was a shift basically looking at the model of saying the college process is almost broken, that students really don't need to go to college for certain careers. And we need to analyze whether there are skill gaps in our region, and partnering with our community college, figuring out what those skill gaps were, and really looking at different professions, and healthcare being number one in our region. We're very fortunate to have 2 major hospitals on each side of Interstate 74 from each other, of UnityPoint and OSF, that are really driving the employment in our region. And we kind of looked at our health occupations program and said, well, are we meeting the scale? Are we filling the skills gap? And what we found in 2016, 2017 school year that we needed to change. We are currently providing instructors from our community college. We're doing a great job in their eyes based on their population of students they had in college. But when we're working with high school students, there's a gap. There was a change that needed to happen. So we decided at that time in Peoria Public Schools was to hire our own staff and support this internally. We also started a program with our region, basically with different employers in our area, and reached out to the employers and said, okay, what do we need to do differently? And then we started with these internship partners. So they basically provided us with a framework as far as what we needed our students to learn and what things they needed to get into the workforce. So that was kind of a program change that really happened. And next slide, please. And at that point, then the employers kind of gave us some feedback. They said, we really want what we call a job-ready candidate. We want someone that's going to come in and actually perform a job just like our person coming off the street. But we believe that your students really need to have a leg up. So we want them to have some form of credential. We also realized that there needs to be some form of soft skills training. So this was all feedback we got from employer engagement meetings, and we basically took this to every program. Next slide, please, Heather. So one of the things that we looked at was who can we partner with? So UnityPoint basically started an internship program with students. What was nice about it was they'd say, okay, well, we're going to take X amount of students and we're going to pay them X amount of dollars. And this can be done usually between their junior and senior year or at their senior year, because we want to get students involved in the healthcare area. They started looking at creating a job fair for these students. So students actually, instead of getting placed, they actually competed for these positions. And at the end, they actually hired some of these students. So next slide, please, Heather. So this gives you an idea in that 2017 school year, the partnership was created with the region, UnityPoint Healthcare, and Peoria Public Schools. At first, it impacted 50 students from 4 different school districts. And this lasted for 80 years. And you can see, I'm not going to read all these slides for you, but it was basically a 4-month internship. It usually started in the second semester and then kind of ended in the summer. Again, we talked about being paid, and UnityPoint was nice enough to pick 4 different areas. It really had turned into 6 different areas when they started, because we started off in the healthcare area, then they went into childcare. And actually, since we have a culinary program, they actually took some of our culinary students and then actually moved them into different areas, from even into dietitians. So opportunities for building maintenance, finance, they actually went farther after that. So it was kind of neat to look at all of our different programs at Woodruff and in Peoria Public Schools and in the region, and find out what those students' interests are and plug them into an internship, a paid internship over the summer. Next slide, please. So some of the things that they started looking at was really looking at competencies. So they started looking at what areas do we need to cover. We actually took this information and started changing the program in our healthcare area and saying, well, instead of teaching kind of an introduction to healthcare's course, maybe we should start teaching medical terminology. Our students need to start learning actually write about medical terminology if they're going to go into healthcare, instead of learning about all things healthcare. Then we wanted to go into a biology course. So we use this framework really to start looking at what we do in our building. But what was nice about it is that if you can read, and I'm not going to read all these to you, but you can see that this is something UnityPoint actually put together for us, and then we actually used it moving forward. As you can see, the different endorsements that go into it. You can see some of the questions that they asked future employees, which were our students. And it kind of went to a full boat where students got to know really what it was like to work for an employer. They know what their responsibilities were. They know what was expected of them. And you can see the questions that were asked of them over and over again. Next slide, please. This is a little bit better. So then they went into, asking more questions of students. And this was throughout their internship in different areas. It really got into students to start really developing what we call a problem-solving model in their brain. They started thinking about, well, how am I going to solve this task? How am I going to go after this? Because in healthcare, as we know, sometimes things happen at a moment's notice. If you have a patient that you have to take care of, you have to react, or that patient might not survive. Next slide, please. So this is a picture of some of our students. You can see the top students, and it's nice to see some of their faces from a few years ago. And actually, these 3 students are actually went on to 4-year degrees and going in for their RN certificates. Kaden actually was in healthcare, but she actually realized that healthcare really wasn't for her, and she really wanted to go into child development. She's currently working at a daycare. The other student on the right slide actually decided that healthcare really wasn't for her, but she liked the logistics aspect of things. So this got students an opportunity to try different things over at UnityPoint. Next slide, please. One of the things that probably made us successful with this was we first got a youth apprentice grant through the Illinois Commerce Commission. And this really gave us the resources to really look at things a little differently regarding developing internship programs. That was the first one we did. We did it with healthcare. And over that time, we changed from a program that was maybe getting 2 students a year that were getting their CNA certificate to, in 2016-17, we actually got 14 students. Because of that partnership we had with UnityPoint, those students actually went in and they said, whoa, wait a minute, you have a CNA program? I said, yes, we do. And they said, we'd like to interview and hire those students. All those 14 students actually interviewed for position, and 13 out of the 14 actually decided to get employed by UnityPoint. And UnityPoint actually paid them for just like a CNA coming in off the street. What was nice about that, then the following year, we backed up with 18 students. And then the following year, we had 22 students. Because of COVID last year, unfortunately, we only had 18 students. And then currently right now, we have 16 students that are actually going to be sitting for their CNA endorsement. So flash forward to this slide. We recently got what we call our IYIP grant from the state of Illinois. And this basically expands our internship programs to other areas besides healthcare. We go into now construction work-based learning. We actually go into culinary and hospitality. We go into collision repair. And then we actually go into IT. This is divided into the 4 different areas. And this is how we fund our new program. We like to refer to it as work, learn, and earn. So they're actually working, they're learning, and then they're actually earning pay. So, and Dr. Gershonich is on here too, and I know she mentioned it in the chat box. When we develop grants now in Peoria Public Schools, after that first grant, we realized we really need to pay our students. Our students are currently working right now, and we really need to pay them for their internships. And usually what happens is, especially in healthcare, once those student gets paid in healthcare, they realize, this is what I like, this is what I want to do. And when you have partners like UnityPoint, they actually keep those students and actually find positions for them in an area that the students like. And, it basically prepares students for the workforce. So they then basically go right into the workforce. We've developed other programs that way too. Next slide, please, Heather. So one of the things we did with all of our programs was we looked after the IYP, we said, you know what, we're having more employers basically coming to us and saying, we'd really like your students. So what we did was we retooled our website. We retooled all of our programs, and it took basically 3 years to do this. And we created a video for each one of our programs. And it's a video of actually, it's really short, it's less than a 2-minute video, but our employers, Our students, our families, our partners can all go on there, click on that video and actually see what's going on in the classroom without actually ever attending our school. We develop a flyer for each one of our programs. We use this as a tool really for employers, students, again, and community members so they see what's going on. We wanted to bring our scale up because career tech ed sometimes gets a bad name. They said, you know what, you're not in the same caliber, it's the same league as like an IB class or an AP class or a dual credit class. Well, actually, a lot of our classes are dual credit. They get dual credit with the community college. But we develop continuous course syllabuses that go off of, these are things that our students are going to learn. There's rubrics at the end on how we're going to grade. So it's set up just like a college syllabus. And then we have a title, what we call What We Do. We're actually our students in internships as well as working in our classrooms. I put the website down there, but you can access that for Peoria Public Schools and see all these things live on our website. If you like to print out a flyer, you can do that at that time also. Next slide, please. So this gives you an idea, and this goes a little bit farther than probably healthcare and probably more than you want to know. But we currently, this year, we had 11 different programs. You can see where healthcare or health occupations is on there, which leads to a CNA certificate. But you can see we have a wide range of programs. Because of our partnership with UnityPoint and actually our move into more of an internship-based program, or like we're referring to here as a work-based learning program, really realized that we need to create other pathways. So you can see for the next school year, we're developing other pathways in our building here at Woodruff, ranging from accounting to bookkeeping, early childhood, because we have a pre-K program in our building. All of our students really want to work on their own. They keep saying, I want to become an entrepreneur, but they really don't know what that means. So a lot of those things are embedded into our programs. So we're going to develop an entrepreneur program. We also have a lot of students based on our Zello response that really like to be artistic and they like the artist aspect of things. So we want to start a graphics communications program where they can actually design things, print things, and actually, go out into employment. Horticulture is another area that there's a skills gap in our region. So we also have a beautiful campus here in our old high school setting. And then we actually have, with our partnership with our community college, they have a beautiful garden that our students can actually do an internship. As you can see from the current programs, we currently have a barber, hair braiding, and cosmetology program. But now we have students that are saying, you know what, we just want a one-year program. So we just started developing a nail tech program for next year. Office occupations kind of came out of, whether you call it administrative assistant or secretary, but we felt that that's an area also where there's jobs out there in our region, but we needed to find ways for our students to get those skills and that certification. Renewable energy is really a hot spot here in Central Illinois. So a lot of programs, they have solar energy, but when Dr. Gerchnich and I first started talking about this 3 years ago, we realized that there's more to the life than solar. And Central Illinois is very big. If you drive down the interstate, down 55, you see a lot of windmills. So wind turbine is very big. And we also have a geothermal in our grade school right next door, which is actually on our same campus. So we looked at renewable energy as another area that, again, there's a skills gap. No one's training students to do this. And we felt that students could go into it basically for installation as well as going into more of the technical aspect. And we were very fortunate. We had a coal plant that was closing in our area last year. And we applied for a grant, and we got a grant for $1.4 million to put solar panels on our building, actually to start this renewable energy program. We also have a teacher education pathway. So as well as a lot of, I recognize a lot of names, a lot of school districts that we all have a teacher shortage. So we wanted to start our own teacher education pathway because we needed to have our own pipeline that we built in. I went a little bit farther into what we do here at Woodruff because it's important to know that you have to look at areas like healthcare where there's a skills gap that you really need to expand and go into things based on your region where you can partner with those employers. Next slide, please. So one thing that we looked at Sorry, I thought there was one more slide. One thing we looked at was with the employers, that's really the biggest piece. That's probably our biggest success story. Peoria has a network going from the mayor's office to the state reps to, the school districts. Everyone partners together in what's in the best interest of the students. Moving into more of an internship, work-based learning model is a natural trend that's really going back in the past. And it's now coming back forward. So if anybody has any questions, I can answer any questions.
Michael, this is Nancy Coleman with the Alignment Collaborative in Elgin. I'm curious about the teacher pathway that you have developed. Does it stretch beyond early education? Does it look at preparing students for the teaching profession across early ed, elementary, middle, high school, and post-secondary? Could you speak to that a little more?
Sure.
We're interested in doing one in Elgin's, why I'm selfishly asking.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So when we first designed this up, we called it an education pathway. And we realized that there's two strands of education. There's basically an early childhood program, because a lot of our students don't want to become teachers, but they like working with little kids. But then we also have students that want to become teachers. So we have basically a two-strand model. We have a strand that goes into early childhood, which there's a lot. I mean, we're very fortunate. We have two pre-K programs actually in our building, one by the district and one is a Head Start program. So we have 160 little kids, 3 and 4 year olds in our building. We said this is a natural thing to have. When we went into the teacher pathway, we dabbled in that a little bit at our home high schools, but we could not get that right mix of students to run it at our home high schools. So we're bringing it here to the Career Center and then rebranding it. When we did that, we actually went to Illinois State University and said, look, our end goal is for students to get their 4-year degree from Illinois State and they get their bachelor's and their teaching certificate. So we want to build that pipeline with that end goal in mind. So then we went to our community college ICC and said, okay, well, what courses can you offer that are dual credit that our students can do? And then of course, then we have to have that dual credit requirement. So we have to have our teachers that are considered adjunct faculty. But what we wanted to do is when we looked at that program, we took 4 courses that were transferable all the way up to Illinois State.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
It does, because we're looking at something very similar, possibly with NIU and through their College of Education. So we were very interested in hearing, and seeing what you have already done.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? I could go into talking about the way we do it with ICC with healthcare. So basically what happens is we get our curriculum from ICC and healthcare. ICC is actually that partner that helps us develop that internship site. Like we have a partnership with UnityPoint, we have a partnership with OSF, but ICC actually helps us navigate that internship, and they basically get that credential, and the students actually get their dual credit with ICC. What's nice about that is we have a partner that we can lean on. ICC has beautiful, nice labs that we don't have yet in our building. So if our students want to go experience that college setting, ICC lets us use those labs. Because of COVID last year, we weren't able to go into the nursing homes. So UnityPoint and OSF basically stepped up and said, you know what? Because of our partnership with ICC, we're going to allow your students to come in and umbrella over that. So our students actually did their internships last summer, or their clinicals last summer, and then they followed up with actually working at ICC in a lab. Then this year we decided to say, you know what, because of COVID, we want to put all of our students first semester. So we had all 18 students first semester do the CNA program. So we actually went to ICC into a lab because, again, social distancing is a big thing. So we wanted to be in a big lab. They didn't have students there, so we took our students to their campus. And then we actually did an internship at OSF. And then when COVID wrapped up again, then we went back to the lab to finish our clinicals. Actually, our students right now are practicing and preparing for their CNA exam coming up actually in a couple weeks. And I know because of our partnership with both OSF and UnityPoint, they both are actually kind of going to us saying, we want all your students. We want all your students. So we're very fortunate. We have two major hospitals that are really saying, do we need to have a job for your students? We want to prove to your students that they should come here instead of over there. So it's nice to have two partners like that. And it's competitive, but it's also friendly. And I would say that's probably our biggest thing in Peoria is that Peoria, as my former boss used to say, that Peoria was once a big town or a big city, but now it's a big town and everybody kind of knows each other. And when you get into a network and then when employers realize you're trying to help students get employed, they really come out and really help us out. So anyway, Nancy, I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Michael. As someone who is working closely with Peoria right now on our GP project, I mean, it's a region that's incredibly collaborative and connected between employer, education, community-based organizations. All the stakeholders are involved. And I guess, correct me if I'm misspeaking here, but in terms of like HIPAA and going through that process, a lot of that is quote unquote solved through like UnityPoint or OSF. They hire them, and so they take the students through the actual hiring process, right? And it sounds like ICC might do some of that too.
They do. So when we did our last grant, we looked at different areas on who was going to pay the employer, and the hospitals basically said, look, we want them to be our employees. We want to take them through the process like we do all of our employees. We want to have them go through the interview process. We want to really mentor these students. We want to find out where their best fit is. We really want them to stay here. And I think that's the thing that's where the HIPAA comes in, where they actually become employees of them. We really don't pay them through grants. We pay for their certifications and things like that. We pay for their scrubs. We pay for their I can't say stethoscopes, but we pay for their supplies and things. But the employer says, you know what, we want to pay them. That's one thing that we want to have. We want to have that buy-in with the student. We want them to know that they matter. So yes, the other thing I want to point out, and I know I see a lot of familiar names on here, I'm also part of an Illinois internship collaborative. And that's really changing the makeup of the state of Illinois. So we talk about work-based learning here in more of a school setting, but there's a larger discussion happening basically in Illinois, as well as the federal government, on the definition of an internship. It used to be the internship was really aligned with like the carpenters or the plumbers or whoever that might be. And now the talk is really we need to have what we call pre-apprenticeships. And then we also have what they call youth apprenticeships, which are really what we're calling here is our work-based learning, where students go out into internships. There's actually language right now in the state, and there's a group in the state that I'm part of. We meet on a quarterly basis, and I know some of the names on here. So if anybody would like to speak up and talk about that, they're probably more versed in it than I am. But we had a meeting 2 weeks ago, and we had a guest speaker from the federal government, and that language is happening in the federal government also. And it's opening up. It could open up anywhere from $500 to $800 million that our school districts can really tap into. So like I said, I just want to echo that. There's a lot more going on with internships and work-based learning, more than just in our little bubble here in Peoria.
Wonderful. Thank you again, Michael, and thank you to the whole Peoria region and team. I'm excited about all the work that you are doing and continue to do. I was going to move us into some breakout groups, but we've only got about 15 minutes here, and I know some folks have had to leave to go to 2 o'clock meetings. Yep, and thank you, Emily. We do have that definition in the Career Pathways Dictionary for youth apprenticeships as well, but interested to connect with you, Michael, and see what's going on in that collaborative and how that aligns with other state work. But, you know, I'm thinking with our kind of smaller group here, if we want to just take a moment and either share in the chat or share out loud, if there's additional questions that you have, insights that you got today, how you're thinking about incorporating some of these pieces shared today. And again, while we have all our presenters here who could help, you know, think through some pieces with you, or if there's a vote to go into breakout groups for even just 5 or 10 minutes here before we wrap up, I'm happy to coordinate that as well.
Heather, can you hear me? This is Tara from the Department of Commerce.
I can hear you.
Perfect. I just want to thank Michael for the presentation and giving us that shout out. I really appreciate that. And it's really prompted me to think about programs that we funded in the beginning stages and really follow up with them to see how they've grown. So sorry, I have a 1-year-old joining us as well. But that's really sparked something new. So I would definitely would love to hear more about the program and just how it's expanded. And you guys have added so many more programs. I mean, just the first year was healthcare, and then we moved to healthcare and construction. And now I saw the new list, and it has just expanded, which is wonderful. So I just want to thank you for that. And like I said, you've prompted me to think about extending the program.
I do know in terms of both presenters who are on here, I don't want to necessarily volunteer you all for this, but I feel like you did. If you ever want to connect and speak with them about their programs, I know they're willing to do that and talk you through that. Yeah, and thank you, Laura. Kind of thinking about, I think that's a really valuable point of both the opportunities in East St. Louis and then Peoria, where thinking through how a hospital can offer so many more experiences beyond even just what we might typically think of as healthcare, nursing and in the lab, but even going beyond that. I mean, talk about Peoria as a town, I feel like a hospital is a whole town in itself as well. All the different things and departments that it needs to run efficiently and smoothly and provide the best care for patients and staff as possible. Well, thank you all. I know these are busy times, so kind of give back a few minutes here, but just wanted to do some quick closing and next steps. Shared with you all last time, but kind of want to shout out here each time is that we do have this kind of resource hub for everything shared through this iWin network. And so you can submit an activity, a resource, or a model right through that website that's linked here at the end of this presentation, and I'll share in the follow-up here as well. You can also very much just send pieces to me, and I'll include those on here. I've done an organization of having everything by the continuum area. So what that activity, that resource, that model really addresses most directly. But this is there for you. It has all the previous recordings and anything that is done through iWin. And so just some next steps here. As always, I will be sending out the recording and the materials from today. Please, if you haven't shared in the chat box already, anything that gets shared there, I definitely make sure to upload. But if there's anything else that you think of now, or as you're kind of reflecting on this session, please feel free to submit that on the site or directly to me. And then based on some feedback from our first conversation in October, kind of started to develop a plan here for some upcoming iWin sessions, and would love your feedback on that. If you have resources or if you'd like to present on any of these items, would love to hear that as well. But in January, thought here is as we're kind of moving into the new year, and can always need a little inspiration as we're in a new year, is there's a really incredible report that came out actually out of New York and their public schools about the way that work-based learning and internships and all work-based learning really can address educational equity. And they make some just really strong cases and pieces about how work-based learning goes beyond just that moment of having that experience, and how it can really support students for more meaningful and fulfilling and being more successful in their college and career pathway. So hoping to get them here to present on that, and also some other items here in terms of the state addressing how communities are really thinking about equity and work-based learning. In February, we have our 60 by 25 conference here in Illinois. So we're going to have Nikki James, who I believe was on here. I don't know if they're still on here now, who is doing a lot of work in virtual work-based learning in terms of research and also implementing with the Practera platform. And so going to be sharing a lot of those learnings about just the experience virtually and how to use a platform in a meaningful way to support those experiences. And then in March, you know, data is always very fun. And just so thinking about data in terms of collecting it for work-based learning, but also what it means when you get data about work-based learning and how you can be thoughtful about the data that you're collecting, how you're looking at it, and just how you're really addressing the needs of students and partners in that. So this is the plan here. It's tentative, can always be changed around as needed, but would love any feedback on that, other things that should be addressed coming up. But excited to continue these convenings, and thank you all again for joining, and hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks, everyone.